Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, folks, the New York Mets find a way today, sweeping those Philadelphia Phillies, the team that was supposedly the class of the NL East. I think not. The New York Mets, the best record in all of baseball. Folks, let me repeat this right now. Let me repeat this. We are 18-7. Best record in baseball. Bar none, this team looks elite. This team looks different. You know what? City Field looks different. We are 12-1 so far with our opponents coming to City Field. You know what? Let me nickname City Field Rip City, where the opponents go to die. You know what? This home field advantage is becoming super significant. The New York Mets pulling out a very, I would say, I don't want to say tough game, but this is a game usually opponents would lose. You have Zach Wheeler on the mound. Zach Wheeler, obviously, always last couple of years a Cy Young candidate. This guy today, pitched a good game. He certainly pitched a good game. He had 9 strikeouts, went 6 strong innings, 2 earned runs, but at the bottom line, you already beat the Phillies twice. That is the team that needs this game. The Mets, yes, you want this game. Yes, you probably, deep down inside, a sweep is a lot nicer, but the Phillies need this game. So they are supposedly fighting. They got the best pitcher out there, but the Mets, you know what? Did never let this one slip away. The Mets kept it close. They started it off nice. Brett Beatty, you know what? Fighting for his job, fighting for his life. You love to see that. Hitting a 2-run bomb off of Zach Wheeler, folks. And that was a bomb. A bomb. And, as I go through this, you know what? Before we get into it, I get so excited. Hit that like button, subscribe, Mets fans, MLB fans. Always forget to say it, but I know most of you always do it anyway, so I thank you in advance. And also, I want to continue to thank our new subscribers and our long-time subscribers for supporting the channel. Drop your comment. How excited are you? How is this team looking? And, honestly, how different is it from your expectations? Right? Because, my expectations going into this season was that the New York Mets were going to build off last year. Last year, from June 1st on, we were the best team in baseball. What do? You add Juan Soto and you add Kodai Senga coming back from injury. All right, most likely you're going to continue to get better. David Stearns in year 2. And I'm going to say this, folks. I'm going to say this. I saw a couple comments, very astute comments. Leadership. It's all about leadership. How different is it looking when you actually have great elite leadership? It is refreshing to have competent leaders. Now, I know there's some Fred Wilpon fans out there, but, it just shows you that a guy like David Stearns knows how to run the organization and take it to the next levels. What he's done with the pitching staff, what he's done with the lab, the baseball analytics, it is just bar none way different here in 2024 and in 2025. We have elevated our game, elevated our play. Our pitchers are pitching on the next level. Our hitters are having the right approach. And that, you like that. When you hear our batters get interviewed, they talk about a strategy. They talk about an approach. Everything is strategized. The New York Mets winning today, it's all really about strategy. I mean, a sour Philly fan will be like, well, you only beat us by 1 run. No. It's more about that. I kind of like that the New York Mets are just doing what they need to do to get these W's. It is a long season. The New York Mets are playing smart. They are playing clutch. And folks, how do you like this? Francisco Lindor, another 2 hits today. Come on, can we anoint this guy the captain? Can we anoint this guy the captain? Because I'm just going to call him Captain Clutch. I'm going to call him Captain Clutch. I know he had an opportunity to, this game went into extra inning. Captain Clutch had an opportunity to win it in the bottom of the ninth, but, it didn't happen. But I got to say, I'm super, super impressed with Lindor. If you look across the diamond and you compare him to Trey Turner, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, they had Trey Turner as the best shortstop in all of baseball. Folks, it's not even close if you compare Trey Turner to Lindor. Lindor is head and shoulders, in my opinion, better than Trey Turner. There's not one thing I can find on that Philly team that, when you match up against the Mets, is superior. Not one thing. Their pitchers, Walker, I'm sorry, Taiwan Walker, forget about him. But their pitchers, Wheeler, Nola, Christopher Sanchez, those three guys putting up against the Mets know how to get these guys out of the game early, and they know how to get key and clutch hits off of these guys. So, I'm super impressed early on. Mets fans, hold your chest out high. We are the best of the best, the cream of the crop right now. In fact, if you really dig down deep in the numbers, we are 5 games up. 5 games up this early in the season. I think the next closest, or the next biggest lead, in fact, the next biggest lead, let me tell you, is the next biggest lead is the Texas Rangers. The Texas Rangers have a 2-game lead on the Houston Astros. Every other team has less than that. Detroit Tigers have a half-game lead on the Guardians. The Yankees have a 1-game lead on the Red Sox. The Padres have a half-game lead on the Dodgers. The Cubs have a 1.5-game lead on the Brewers. And the Mets have a 5-game lead on the Phillies. Already early on, burying the opponent. And then when you go to look on how we are doing this, we have the second best run differential in all of baseball. So we are pitching and we're hitting. We have 105 runs scored. And folks, we know the lineup is not even close to clicking. Yes, you have Lindor hot. Yes, you have Pete hot, but that's about it. Then you got spattered in some clutch hitting, but the Mets have so much damn opportunity. You got Soto that's going to get better. Vientos, oh my God, a bunch of strikeouts today. But you know what? It happens. Wheeler's a good pitcher. Bottom line, McNeil coming back, Alvarez coming back. I like the catcher situation. The sky's the limit for this team, and the Mets have 69 runs scored against, giving them a plus-minus of positive 36. The only other team in baseball that has a higher runs differential is the Chicago Cubs, and they have a plus 42. But the Cubs, they're scoring a lot because, pitching, they're not pitching anywhere like the Mets. The Cubs have allowed 114 runs against them, and the Mets have allowed 69. So it's not even close. That right there, if you have a playoff series and the other team doesn't have that elite pitching, you're not really going to go far, in my opinion. All right, folks. So the Mets are doing well. Now let's get to today's game. And today's game, like I said, was monumental. And the Phillies needed this game, folks. The Phillies certainly needed this game way more than the Mets. Way more than the Mets. So for the Mets to pull this out, it just shows you how much more and how much more united this team is. All right. So to get to it, David Peterson went 5 1/3 today, 8 hits, 2 runs, 2 earned runs. And I got to give Peterson credit, right? Peterson gave up 2 earned runs, right? So that wasn't that bad. Didn't have his best stuff today. Certainly didn't have his best stuff. Threw a lot of pitches in the second. Threw a lot of pitches in the fourth. The Phillies really ran up the pitch count. Like, it really felt like a game that the Phillies should have won and were going to win. And at the end of the day, as a Mets fan, you're like, okay, they won the series, right? So that's why sweeping this series just feels all that much better. So if you look at it, it certainly was a statement victory for the New York Mets. All right, so like I was saying, David Peterson had to do some really big navigating in certain innings. The top of the second inning, it really started. That's where I had circled the opportunity for the Phillies to actually put their mark on this game, to not break things open, but really get started on the right foot. It started off, you had JT Realmuto. He had a sharp line out, but then you had Alec Bohm single. You had Edmundo Sosa single. So you have two men on, you have one out, and David Peterson already has to dig down deep to get some very important outs. So Weston Wilson, he would reach on a fielder's choice. Mark Vientos, this was an error by him, unfortunately. So you have Alec Bohm going to third, Edmundo Sosa going to second. And it was, again, this compounding the situation. So you have bases loaded, Johan Rojas up, and it's only one out. All right, so Johan Rojas, you know, this was a very, I think this was a very important at bat, very important at bat. But David Peterson got Rojas to fly out to Juan Soto, second out, folks. Then Trey Turner comes up, big Trey Turner, opposite of Francisco Lindor, supposedly the Phillies superstar shortstop. Trey Turner grounds out into a force, and threat ended, no runs across the board. Phillies, if you're in that situation, you have to at least get one run. But you just give credit to David Peterson. He made his pitches. All right. Second inning. And the Mets, I always say, make your mark. It's always good to kind of get off to the right, a good start. And I think that's what the Mets have been doing lately. They've been really scoring early, and they've been like getting one or two runs here and there, and then by the end of the game, they have enough runs to hold the lead. So in the second inning, you have Vientos singling. Good job, Mark. Jesse Winker strikes out. Tyrone Taylor strikes out. And you have Mr. Brett Baty fighting for his life. And this is where he hit that two-run bomb, giving the Mets an early lead off of Zach Wheeler, no less. Zach Wheeler. So it made it a two-run lead for the New York Mets. And, David Peterson went on to work with that two-run lead, got to the fourth inning, and things got dicey. JT Realmuto, again, he starts off the inning with a line out. And, JT Realmuto, I mean, he's really, in my opinion, he's just a shell of himself from a couple years ago. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, I'm like, oh, wow, I really wish we would have signed Realmuto. But Realmuto starts off the fourth, lines out, but then Alec Bohm singles. Edmundo Sosa comes up, forces an out. So you have two outs. You have one man on. Weston Wilson singles. This brings Sosa to second. And then you have Johan Rojas singling after that. Edmundo Sosa scores, and Weston Wilson goes to third. And this, really cuts the Mets deficit in half. Not deficits. This cuts the Mets lead in half to 2-1. All right. Trey Turner is up. Will the Mets execute, and will they get Trey Turner to make another out? No. This time, Trey Turner singles on a ground ball to right field. Weston Wilson scores. Johan Rojas goes to second, and it is 2-2. Next guy up, you have Mr. Bryce Harper. And again, we have to get out of this inning. And, after giving up 2 runs, you get Bryce Harper to ground out to Pete Alonso, and inning over, damage limited. And, it was a tough, again, top of the second inning and top of the fourth inning, 2 very tough innings, but David Peterson was able to limit the damage. So it ended the inning. It was 2-2 New York Mets. Top of the fifth, it was fairly easy. A walk to Kyle Schwarber, and then you get JT Realmuto to ground in a double play, and Nick Castellanos lines out. So that wasn't that bad. Bottom of the fifth inning, the Mets tried to mount something. They tried to put a little more insurance. Hayden Singer starts things off. He strikes out. But then you got Lindor coming up, Captain Clutch. I'm going to stick with that. Juan Soto walks. So you got first and second, one out, and Pete Alonso, the polar bear, coming up to the plate. Unfortunately, the polar bear did not come through. He flies out to the left fielder, making it 2 outs. All right, maybe Brandon Nimmo could, help us out and pick up the slack. But no, unfortunately, he grounds out, and that was the last out of the inning. But the fifth inning was another opportunity for the Mets to add some insurance. All right, so if we fast forward to the sixth, um, we have Peterson. Peterson went out for the sixth, and you see this with Carlos Mendoza. The thing is, Mendoza, he's really trying to get length out of these starters. I mean, he's not just going, okay, you had a great performance, 5 innings, you're done. And I feel that's what we did so often last year, or not, well, maybe not last year, but in years past, if a guy pitched a very solid 5 innings, like he was a fragile doll, a piece of glass, they would say, okay, don't even put him out for the sixth. We don't even want to risk something bad happening. No, I like it. See, maybe he gets a couple quick outs. Maybe even if he gets one or two very big outs, it takes that stress away from the bullpen. All right, so he starts off the sixth. He gets a very important out. Alec Boehm lines out. And then you have Edmundo Sosa singling, and that's the hook. All right, anybody gets on base in the sixth inning, you got a hook. Huascar Braziban comes in, and very easily you get Max Kepler to fly out, Johan Rojas to fly out. But I like that mentality. I don't like it in every situation, but I like it with the starters. If they're pitching, to at a modicum of decent level, I like the way that we are relying on our starters who are doing phenomenal early on. Phenomenal. Okay. All right. So that was good. That was good. All right. So the bottom of the sixth inning, fairly quick. The Wheeler strikes out the side. Wheeler strikes at the side. Again, he struck out 9 people, strikes out Vientos, strikes out Winker, strikes out Taylor. So it is a 2-2 game still going into the seventh inning. And again, Braziban stays in to get Trey Turner. He gets Trey Turner to ground out. Then Danny Young replaces Braziban, gets Bryce Harper to strike out, gets Kyle Schwarber. So we get out of the inning, no trouble there. The Mets, they tried to do some business in the bottom of the seventh inning. Acuna leads off with a strikeout. Hayden Singer pops out, but the Mets don't give up at bats. Francisco Lindor, again, Captain Clutch, starts things off, gets on base, and anything can happen when Juan Soto comes to the plate. But unfortunately, in this situation, Juan Soto would strike out. All right. So fast forward to the eighth inning. The top of the eighth inning was an extremely important inning, and this was the inning that I guess at the end of the day won the game for the Mets, or led to a win for the Mets. So this was a tough inning. You had Jose Butto coming in, and this wasn't the best of Butto in this inning. He didn't have his control. He would end up walking 2 guys, and it would kind of go like this. The inning starts off with a Nick Castellanos walk. He then would go on to strike out Rio Muto. He gets Boehm to strike out. He gets Boehm to ground out. So it's 1 man on, 2 outs, and we have an opportunity to get out of the inning. But no, we was heading. We're facing Bryson Stott, and Bryson Stott is walked by Butto. So again, you got 2 walks already. So you got 2 men on, and these 2 men are free passes. Again, I mean, we're getting lucky here, but these free passes are what comes back to bite you. All right. So, and in this opportunity, Max Kepler comes up with 2 men on, 2 outs, singles on a line drive to right field. Luckily, Juan Soto made a nice, pretty solid one-hop throw to the catcher to nab Nick Castellanos at the plate. Hayden Singer made a nice play, made a nice tag, blocked the plate, and folks, that would have been the ball game. I mean, that would have been the ball game if he was able to score. It would have been 3-2 because, as we know, the Mets didn't score in the ninth. Okay, so big play, Juan Soto with that throw. All right, in the bottom of the eighth inning, again, another 1-2-3 inning for the Phillies. Pete Alonso line out, Brandon Nimmo ground out, Mark Vientos striking out. And Mark had a horrific game. I mean, he did have that one hit, but he had three strikeouts. So that's, Mark, we expect big things from Mark. So let's just put it that way. So in the top of the ninth inning, Edwin Diaz comes in, and Edwin Diaz looked sharp in the ninth. He gets Cal Stevenson to fly out, Trey Turner to strike out, and Bryce Harper to ground out. All right, so Diaz, we're going to get to him momentarily. But in the bottom of the ninth inning, the Mets tried their very best to win it in before overtime. So Starling Marte comes up to the plate. He lines a ball out sharply to left field, hit the ball hard. Take note of that, but it was a sharp out. Next guy up, Tyrone Taylor strikes out, and the Mets very quickly get to 2 outs. Next guy up, Luis Angel Acuna singles on a ground ball to center field, and you just gotta love this kid. And Acuna and Beatty, they are really fighting it out. But I want both these guys to be on the team. I certainly do. That's my opinion. Let me know. Do you want both guys? And if you don't want both guys, which one? And I'm guessing Acuna really deserves to be up here. All right, so Acuna gets on base. So you got one man on base, 2 outs. Torrens would single. So now you got 2 men on base, 2 outs, and you have Captain Clutch Francisco Lindor coming up to the plate. And very un-Francisco Lindor-like, Lindor grounds out to the second baseman Bryson Stott, and that ends the rally in the ninth inning, and that causes the Mets and the Phillies to go to extra innings. All right, so what is Carlos Mendoza going to do? Carlos Mendoza is going to do what he's been doing. He's going to try to see if he can get more outs out of the pitcher that has been doing well. And Edwin Diaz had a short ninth. So you go out, and it looks like Edwin Diaz was going to start the ninth, and he did start the ninth. All right, so it goes like this. So you have Bryce Harper starting at second base. He's going to be the runner, and Kyle Schwarber comes up to the plate and very easily strikes out. Bryce Harper would then steal third. So the situation is this. You have 1 out and Bryce Harper at third. Nick Castellanos comes up. He does get a single, and now would score Harper, and the Phillies would mount a 3-2 lead. And, some people are hanging their heads down. But, folks, not on this team. We then noticed that Edwin Diaz was taken out of the game, and it was wondering what the heck happened. We then heard rumors that he got injured. Oh, no, what happened? Did he hurt his arm? I hear people thinking Tommy John. Uh-oh. All right, well, thank God. It looks like, from what Mendoza said and from what people were saying, it seems like he has a cramp in his left hip. In fact, he noted that one leg felt like it was longer than the other. So, it's good that it doesn't seem like it's going to be anything serious, but, that's something that has to get fixed because, if you have cramping your legs, you don't want other parts of your body to compensate for that. All right, so bottom line, Max Kranick comes in, replaces Edwin Diaz. So the next batter, JT Realmuto, would come up to the plate. He would walk, so the situation would get even dicier. Alec Bohm, to even make it more dicier, he would single. So now you have a few men on base and you have one out. And the Phillies again have another golden opportunity. They had golden opportunities in the second inning. They had golden opportunities in the fourth inning. They had golden opportunity in the eighth inning. And now they have another golden opportunity in the 10th inning to mount a several run inning. Okay, so what would happen? So Bryson Stott would walk up to the plate, and Max Kranick would get Bryson Stott to fly out. All right, now you have Max Kepler up, and again, another pop-up was induced, this time to Mr. Juan Soto. So the damage was limited, and how important was that? But the Mets still needed to push a run across. It goes to the bottom of the 10th, and Francisco Lindor would be the free runner, so he would start at second base. So Juan Soto is up, and you're looking good. The heart of the lineup is coming up. So Juan Soto starts off. He grounds out to the second baseman Bryson Stott, but it was fairly productive out. Francisco Lindor moved to third, and this brings up Pete Alonso, the polar bear. And if you saw this in live play, Pete Alonso ended up getting a double, right? But if you saw where this ball was, it was an outside pitch that literally Pete tapped. He swung with one hand, tapped this ball to the right center field gap. It was around the warning track. I mean, the amount of talent and power Pete has is phenomenal. And, just throws the bat head out there, gets a double, gets a very important RBI, ties the game, and again, Polar Bear clutch too. You have Captain Clutch for Lindor, and the Polar Bear is super clutch as well. So the next guy up, Brandon Nimmo, gets intentionally walked. Mark Vientos would be brought up to the plate, and I was really hoping Mark would come through, but Mark this game wasn't feeling it. He strikes out yet again. All right, so big moment. Marte had been hitting the ball well, had been hitting some line drives all over the field, just not getting luck. So Starling Marte comes into the box, and finally he gets a line drive to center field. Wasn't as well struck as his other balls, but it was a solid line drive to center field. Fell in before Cal Stevenson. Pete Alonso would come around third base. The throw would come in, but Pete Alonso wheels would beat the throw out. And the Mets would win another exciting game at Citi Field, making the New York Mets 18-7, 11 games over 500, best record in baseball, 5 games ahead of the Phillies, and they are putting their mark early on in the season. And can you sense this team's energy, this team's passion, this team's unity, this team's drive, every single adjective you could think of? The New York Mets really represent and embody, dare I say it, a championship team. Wow. And finally, I mean, I was looking at YouTube, and you see the guys in WFAN, they're finally on board. They're on board. Last week was like, oh, it's Juan Soto, rip him. And, but, we got the guys at WFAN on board that they believe that the New York Mets have what it takes. I mean, not that it really matters, but, I find that interesting. But, folks, let me know what you think. What does this team still need to prove? Because I felt that we needed to play a team at like that upper echelon. I mean, Phillies, they were ranked. Some people ranked the Phillies as the best team in baseball, second best team in baseball, third best team in baseball. We just swept them. What is the next test? What is the next challenge? We beat a couple other good teams. The Blue Jays are, a very good team. Marlins, again, they're a feisty team. The Cardinals came in as a very hot-hitting team. The Mets did well pitching against them, not squeaking out, but really, getting by that series pretty well. They swept them as well. And the Mets are on a 7-game winning streak. This is their second 6+ game winning streak so early. I mean, what is it, April 23rd? April 23rd, and the Mets already have multi 6+ game winning streaks. So, I mean, this is just telling you that the Mets are going to be a team to reckon with. The New York Mets are going to certainly be a winning team. And again, yes, you don't have Juan Soto hitting like he does. I mean, hitting like he should be. He's hitting 233, folks. So you are essentially doing this with Juan Soto hitting 233, Brandon Nimmo hitting 196, Mark Vientos hitting 175, Jesse Winker hitting 213, Marte hitting 186, Tyrone Taylor hitting 188, Brett Beatty hitting 204, and Sanger, the catcher today, hitting 179. So, folks, just wait. Just wait. It's amazing the Mets are finding and doing what they need to do to win despite that. Despite that. But just wait. Just wait until the offense gets going. I mean, I hear, people say, oh, it's not a dominant win. It doesn't have to be a dominant win. All you got to do is score one more run than your opponent, and you will be ultra successful throughout the year. And that's what the Mets have been very good at doing. And again, that is all they have to do. All right. Again, I'm going to call it quits right now, but let me know what you think. If you didn't get a chance, like, subscribe, and again, end off. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great night, day, whenever you're watching this.